Hey there, e-commerce Fastlane listeners. I want to take a quick moment and give a shout out to an amazing sponsor, Absolute Web. Now, if you're looking for a powerhouse team to take your Shopify store to the next level, then look no further. Absolute Web is a full-service design and e-commerce development agency. They've been pushing the boundaries of what's possible on Shopify for over 2 decades. Now, whether you need a highly customized design that truly sets your brand apart, a complex integration to kind of streamline your operations, or even a complete site implementation from the ground up, Absolute Web has got you covered. Now, they have an in-house team of UI and UX designers. They have architects. They really are the go-to all-in-one solution for e-commerce brands that really want results and they want them now. And get this, if you're currently on another platform and you're considering to make the switch to Shopify, the experts at Absolute Web have deep experience in migrations too. They'll make the process smooth and painless, and you can start reaping all the benefits of being on Shopify. So if you're ready to build, optimize, or even scale a high-converting e-commerce storefront, head on over to absoluteweb.com and you can learn more about their extensive technical and creative e-commerce services. That's absoluteweb.com. And now back to the show.
You're listening to Ecommerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was so interesting. There's so many podcast choices out there and, in marketing and in Shopify world and ecosystem. And so I just appreciate that you're taking time and listening to today's episode. I'm thrilled to introduce my guest. His name is Mike True, and he's the co-founder and CEO of a company called Prescient AI. Now, Mike's journey is very interesting in tech and e-commerce space. I'd call it arguably probably pretty impressive. He's actually worked with a lot of key roles in a lot of amazing companies like App Annie. I believe he's part of IBM, he's through Oracle for a while. He really, his main role was to help clients really generate revenue, a lot of revenue through AI and through analytic solutions. And his expertise really, from what I understand, really lies in leveraging technology to optimize marketing strategies, really to help drive e-commerce growth. And that's kind of what we all want here. Now, Prescient has a very unique way for e-commerce brands to approach what's called media measurement and kind of budget optimization. And we kind of just talked offline before recording. It's so interesting if, a certain ad campaign could pop for whatever reason. There could be some kind of a social mention or something happening in the market. It's just like, what are you doing about the fact that a certain campaign is doing really well when you only allocated a certain amount of money to a certain kind of campaign, and all of a sudden the ROAS is there based on your sweet spot, but unfortunately you're not able to increase those budgets and maximize what's actually happening in real time. I think that's what the unique thing about this tool that's actually going to help brands with. And so today, I really want to dig into this AI-driven marketing optimization. I want to talk about e-commerce analytics. I want to talk about how to navigate this digital landscape right now. It's so interesting kind of what's been going on in the world. I know he's worked with a lot of amazing brands, a lot on Shopify too, like Good American and HexClad, and I've looked at quite a few other case studies on the website. And so Timbuktu, and there's just a whole gang of them. So let's welcome Mike to E-commerce Fastlane.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off a bit. I really want to understand the founding story of your company, and then let's talk about the unique value that this platform is bringing to Shopify brands.
Yeah. So in 2020, I linked up with my co-founder, Cody, who's the brains behind the madness of the AI. Cody is just a brilliant research scientist at his core. He took a lot of the learnings from his time at Grubhub, where they were researching models that could use marketing spend and other events to predict orders at the zip code level across 700 metropolitan cities to properly staff their drivers so the food wasn't cold. And so, true research at its core, we met and we went out to solve a problem of attribution and measurement in the music industry, where we essentially built an MMM from scratch to help record labels measure not only their marketing spend, but virality events. The data around an artist when they get ready to promote a song is much bigger than like a product on Shopify. You think of like somebody like Cardi B, who's getting ready to promote a song. Well, she's going on the James Corbin show. She's at Coachella. There's doing a variety Twitter live feeds, all these different things to promote the song. And then you have your digital marketing spend. Interesting thing about the music industry compared to a Shopify brand is Spotify and Apple Music and the streaming platforms. There's no Google Analytics. There's no last click, right? And so you have all of this paid and earned noise. So when they think about investing marketing dollars, which channels and campaigns do they spend on? And so we partnered with Warner Music Group. We started back testing with historical songs to see if we could predict them. And it took about 4 months of research of Cody to start building this out. And we did a back testing 93 to 98%. So that's kind of the measurement of an MMM. Getting confidence into the label executives. And then we started running, essentially we call it counterfactual. If we had that same budget in those same channels and our model spent the budget, how many more streams could they have had? And then February of 2021, Cardi B was coming out with her Up song. And remember we were watching it. We didn't have a platform. We were just taking data, running it and giving them screenshots back. Two guys in a digital garage, if you will. And we said, shift between a variety of YouTube and TikTok and Snapchat and Spotify ads and Meta. And we said, we're 97% confident this is how many streams we think she'll get. And we ended up predicting that at 96.3% accurate. And lo and behold, I'm sure everybody on this podcast will remember, April 26th came shortly after that. And that was the day Apple announced iOS 14.5. And he called me and said, listen, this model can work across every penny spent online and offline. Which industry do you want to go to? So we started talking to like healthcare companies, entertainment companies, financial services companies. And we ultimately landed on starting with e-commerce. It was COVID. And, we felt like we could get the data into the models pretty quickly.
That's so interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's kind of the crux of our show today, was trying to understand this media measurement and then, as I called it, like this budget optimization. Because I really feel that a lot of brands, unfortunately, literally from my perspective, as I've interviewed a lot of people trying to solve these sort of problems, and some marketers that just like, hey, they just rely on Meta and Google and TikTok to like the PMax type of algorithms where it's just performance driven. Give them the amount of money you're willing to spend for the day and what you believe your cost per acquisition should be. And they're going to try their best to find your next best customer. And I feel it's a little bit of a black box. So I just want to hear it from your perspective. You can kind of walk us through what is the key differentiators between what these social platforms are offering from these ad platforms versus the AI-powered solution where you're making the recommendations and you're pushing through to what the platform is saying you should be spending and the keywords and the targeting.
Well, I think that, Meta and Google have built really great, consolidation of campaigns and trying to go out and find, new customers, if you will. I think it's a couple ways, naturally, they want to make money. It's their own black box, right?
Yeah.
Let's call it spade
100%.
But they also live within what you call walled gardens, right? And so if you see a PMAX campaign that comes through PMAX or Advantage Plus or just any campaign anywhere, and it's not clicked, right? They don't see what happens when you go search them or go to the website and you have a last click that takes credit for it. And so while yes, you can get some great performance within each platform, there's a lot of noise and a lot of things that creates an even bigger black box, right? Aggregated black box across all the individual black boxes that can mislead to, one, missed opportunities based off of, the larger black box. But two, it can prohibit a lot of the confidence that people want to have when they really want to scale that top of funnel spend.
So then what happens then if a brand chooses to use your solution and says, okay, you know what? I don't want to use these kind of baked in solutions, and I want your platform to make decisions. Can you talk about what some of these decisions are? Like, I'm not asking to like reveal the hidden AI behind the curtain, but there's got to be some high level concepts here of kind of what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, I think there's what happened yesterday, and then using what happened yesterday. When I mean yesterday, what's happened in the past, right? How are you currently spending in that historically? And then based off of how you're spending historically, what should happen tomorrow, or call that in the future, right? And this is just based on your spend. But our models will say, hey, based off of what happened yesterday, here's what could happen tomorrow, right? So here's what should happen tomorrow based off of your existing spend, but here's what could happen tomorrow based off of leveraging AI and optimization techniques. I think it's important to highlight when you think of an ecosystem of a brand. Well, spend is just one of the things that could drive somebody to their site to consider purchasing a product and then convert. There's a lot of great tools out there when you land on the website to help them convert. But what else when you think about the ecosystem that could drive somebody to your website, there's a lot of seasonality that sits within behind these businesses, right? And you want to try to control, these models want to try to control. And what I mean by control is understand, or being able to explain all of these things. And so the other part of that is word of mouth, right? People are just talking about your brand, right? So you have seasonality, you have word of mouth, you have things like holidays, which could be tied to seasonality, and then you have your spend. And so we have a very unique model that aggressively seeks out all of the things that are not tied to spend. So once you can control for that, and you layer the spend on top of that, and you run it through back testing, just like we did with Cardi, with all the historical data and then the data that feeds our models every day, you start to get really confident in different levers that you can pull to help them optimize their spend for things like revenue, for ROAS, for acquisition cost, so on and so forth.
So the one side I get here is the net new customers that we're driving, and that's the typical way of advertising, is just trying to find that net new. But then the other side of the coin is the retention play. And so how does Prescient fit into that? And the reason I ask that question is because I think that's where true profitability kind of comes out in a brand. I mean, I'd argue a lot of brands actually are at a net loss for the first transaction in a lot of businesses. And so they're aggressively trying to figure out, well, this RFM, this recency frequency monetization strategy, they're trying to figure out through tools. And there's different tools out there to say, hey, if you bought product A, we believe within this time period, because we have historical data to prove it, that this person who bought A likely within this period is going to buy product B or another one of A. And so knowing this kind of thing, does Prescient understand that retention side of it? And then can there be campaigns deployed to say, hey, just we know that you bought A and it's about time for you to buy B now because we have thousands of customers who bought A and have bought B in this certain time frame?
No, you know what? I'm a firm believer in like triangulation of data and decisions.
Okay, yeah.
We are in the camp, and I think we can talk about a little bit this more, even on just the acquisition side, but there's a plethora of great tools out there that do just a great job with optimizing and taking audiences and putting them back in based off of LTV and trying to, acquire, hey, run this campaign for new customers based off of, your highest LTV clients. Part of our roadmap, my co-founder actually researched the LTV model over at Grubhub as well. But there's just so much opportunity on the acquisition side as brands look to really scale outside of Meta and Google, or it's just a really challenging spot here. So we really just are a master of one thing right now, and that is helping you acquire new customers and spend your marketing budget intelligently.
I'd argue too that, using tools like Klaviyo or Attentive or PostScript or these sort of email and SMS tools, they're able to import the data and run their RFM modeling through there and then can proactively outreach directly if we have some contact information, which we likely do, and some authorization to do that, and can also run retargeting campaigns or a reorder campaigns individually one-on-one. So this technology is available through a lot of these great partners. So I could see why maybe you wouldn't want to dabble too much in that.
Yeah, I always think like SMS, and we get asked this a lot, well, what are you going to pull in Klaviyo or Attentive? And my question is just like, well, is that a top of funnel channel for you? And there can be an argument there saying, hey, like we want to run campaigns that are going to go acquire for more at a tactic level. They're going to acquire for email signups or getting your phone number, right? Where I think the true challenge for brands that are scaling outside of Meta and Google for traditionally not clicked channels is, are they working or are they not? And we've created some incredible, call it math, right? That is very reliable and explainable to help them scale their spend to acquire new customers, and pass that over to the Klaviyo's and the Attentives from there, Postscripts from there to help retain those clients. But it's not too far of a roadmap where we'd start thinking about some, high level LTV model.
Perfect. So you mentioned about the iOS 14.5 update, which really even open, not showing even open rates in email, and just, I understand kind of what Apple is up to, and Google's, been pushing back a little bit on their cookie apocalypse in Chrome and whatnot. But so data privacy obviously is a huge conversation that's happening. And so knowing that, it's like, how is your platform kind of addressing a little bit of these challenges? Because I think there is this attribution problem in this media mix modeling that you're talking about. So I just love to hear your feedback about how you're solving some of that.
Absolutely. I want to do a quick aside just for the audience out there, just to kind of compare them. It's not the best of news, but when I want to peel back the onion here, that if you really look into it, right?
Yeah.
You see the bill. I live in Miami. You see the billboards where Apple has a big billboard, and it's like, we have your security in the best interest. I'm not saying that they don't, right? But if you notice Apple's advertising revenue from when it was like 300 million, it went up to like 4 billion in 4 years, right?
Right.
And so what they're doing is Apple announced iOS 14.5, right? And then they announced, which I'd encourage the audience to check into, is private relay, right? Which essentially I heard in the rumblings that it'll be turned on by default in one of the upcoming iOS updates, which will essentially be kind of the demise of a third-party pixel, right? Because it's blocking the IP address. And then what did you see? You see Google come out with Google One VPN. So essentially, they're weaponizing data privacy to take market share for advertising revenue. And who does that impact? Obviously, it impacts the marketers, right? And this is where you have tools like us that come in to try to give them, a little bit more clarity as they're starting to go on these aggressive data privacy wars. And so when you think about what we call as a media mix model, or you could think about it as a marketing mix model, these were created in the 1960s. And this is a really good analogy for people to conceptualize the difference of perhaps like a multi-touch attribution to an media mix model is 1962, there's no internet, right? And you have a box store where you're selling your products at a physical location. And what did you have? You had a billboard, a TV, a radio, a catalog, and a newspaper. And they had a bunch of people walk into your store and purchase it. Well, when they would they had budgets back then. Well, when we're going to deploy our budget, was it the TV, the billboard, the catalog, the radio, or the newspaper? So they took as much data as they could around that, right? How many households were they sent it to? What location were these households? How many people would drive past the billboard? How many people saw these ads, right? And they built these statistical models, right? And then the internet came out and you could track everybody. And so getting customer user journeys was a little bit easier when the internet came out, and then data privacy came into fruition, right? And then you had MTAs that came out that did a wonderful job. And, shout out to the people over at, Northbeam, Triple Whale, and Rockerbox and others that built a fantastic pixel that was giving them more clarity as iOS 14.5 came out. But as the internet became less and less, I'd say, like trackable, right? You're kind of right back in the 1960s, right? But the data sets that you use now, when somebody would onboard to a platform, you're really looking at time series data. So think about that as like your sales by day, your spend by day, your sessions by day for the channel, the campaign, the tactic, right? And then layering in, seasonality and all the other things that we talked about. It doesn't rely on any of the user level data, right? So it's not trying to say, hey, this user saw this ad and they clicked here, and then they purchased. It's saying, hey, 100 million people saw these ads. Some of them clicked, some of them didn't. And there's a bunch of sessions and clicks and revenue that pops up. Or what is that statistical relationship between that spend and that revenue across your different sales channels?
So, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a loaded question too, but when we talk about this, how to, I guess, accurately attribute sales across these different platforms, the reason why I'm going to ask this question is because many brands, when I was at Shopify, the marketers had all different ways of looking at attribution, either at first click or last click. A lot of them was some of the things we were talking about this blended ROAS too, total ad dollars spent Are we trending in the right direction? I can't directly attribute, what happens from word of mouth or what happens from a paid ad to clicking over here and then going over here and then going direct and not really truly. And then let's talk about the cookie expiring. There's so many different variables here. So I just would like to hear from your perspective about how are you dealing with that? I think it's a very complex problem of accurately attributing sales in all these different platforms and knowing where the money was initially spent, but then where the transaction actually occurred.
Well,
oh, that's a trick. It's a trick.
No. When I came into the space, I was like talking to someone, and again, like I've never worked at a brand, I've never bought an ad, I've never been in a business manager, I've never worked in an agency. And for the people out there, you shouldn't want us having to do that. We look at this as purely as a mathematical problem, and then partnering with our clients to disseminate this information down into a very consumable and actionable way. But there's no source of truth. Like, I'm not the silver bullet, and the MTA is not your silver bullet. Your incrementality testing isn't your silver bullet. The first click, last click, right? Mm-hmm. Platform reported. There's no silver bullet, right? Mm-hmm. What I've been seeing for some of our, I'll give a shout out to Cam and Connor over at HexClad. They do a fantastic job of what I call triangulation, and a really great use case that Cam over at HexClad made a LinkedIn post the other day about was our models were saying, hey, connected TV, right? Neon Pixel, shout out to Brooke over there, is running connected TV. And then our models were saying, hey, you're seeing I'm just going to fudge numbers you're seeing a 2 ROAS in your connected TV platform. We were showing a 9, right? And then and they wanted to scale meta. So we used our optimization model and said, we selected the campaigns, we ran the optimization, we told them how much they should scale, right? But when they were selecting those campaigns, they were leveraging Northbeam's MTA, right? Where it was like, all right, well, how do I take what Prescient's measurement is for these campaigns? How do I triangulate that with what the MTA is saying, right? And then they scaled it, and then they used an incrementality tool, which I'm a big fan of. Shout out to Zach over at House. They used a incrementality test to calibrate and validate the results. And it was pleasantly to see, it was great to see that like our recommendation alongside an MTA, proved out on the forecast. And so there's no like, hey, and it all depends on like the stage of the brand of where they're at, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the brands I talk to each week, like they don't need an MMM sort of solution, and recommend, a lot of the MTA solutions out there. If they're just, call 1 to 10 million on Shopify and they're just on Meta and Google, right? There's not a need for that, right? But as they start to scale into Amazon and retail, and they're going to TikTok and TV and podcast and radio, this is where an MMM alongside of an MTA can become very valuable.
We should talk about Amazon, because I think, my wife just joked last night. She goes like, every second vehicle that goes by our neighborhood is an Amazon truck. And, the going joke is that, I think it's like half of e-commerce is happening on Amazon in North America, and the other half are Shopify stores. Kind of. It seems like that way. Almost 25% of goods and services are being done online, and Amazon owning half of that. And so there's this concept called the halo effect. And I just would like to hear it because I think you've spoken about this before. I just want to hear your concept and what is the halo effect in advertising as it relates to Amazon or other parts of the advertising model. And then how is that concept important for brands to understand?
Very simply put, I'm sure every brand can attest to this, even in Amazon and in your Shopify or Salesforce. We cover Salesforce Commerce Cloud as well. In your D2C store, when you look at your search, whether it's Bing or Google, it's like, well, my last click, my search is showing me a 20 ROAS. And they're like, intuitively, I know that's too high, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it goes back to the notion of these walled gardens, right? And especially for the view-based channels, is people are not clicking these ads, but they're seeing it. Think about influencers. They're scrolling. They rarely click the discount code or revenue link, or they're on YouTube. Right. But they see it, and then they go search paid organic, go directly to the website. So what our models do is we will say, hey, the bottom of funnel search, it deserves, instead of giving it a 20 ROAS, we'll give it a 5, right? What we'll do is we'll redistribute that credit to the top of the funnel. And this is the same thing for Amazon, right? It takes too much credit within the platform. So we will redistribute the credit to the top of the funnel. But our models at the individual campaign level that updates every single day will be able to tell you, hey, this TikTok campaign or this YouTube campaign drove X amount to your Shopify store, but it also drove X amount to your Amazon store. And so, early on, this was our first product we came out with a year and a half ago, was halo effects. And that's what we've been calling them ever since. Yeah, that's really our core competency is figuring out the halo effect for all of the noise that's going on the top of the funnel, and then doing our best job using statistical back-tested confidence score models to redistribute that credit to where we feel. So if you're looking at our platform, you might see, a YouTube that has a ROAS of a 1.3, and we're going to say it actually has a 5, right? And then we layer on allow them to drill in to look at different points of saturation plots and actually allow them to go in and say, well, what happens if we change spend to this campaign based off of these saturation plots? And what I mean by saturation plots, essentially diminishing returns, right? And so you'll be able to actually identify where you're overspending or underspending. And then if you make those changes, we'll know, and we'll actually predict and track, are we on pace to hit the forecast based off of those spend thresholds? And so we like to combine not only what happened yesterday with the halo effects, but using those halo effects and saturation plots to give them a line of sight and some clarity into what is the art of the possible by being very dynamic with their spend at the campaign level, and then being able to see those results the next day.
Very cool. I want to talk about Shopify stores specifically now. I know you do with Salesforce also, but what's the onboarding process look like? Can you kind of walk us through? Because I think the reason I ask this question is because a lot of brands that I have worked with in the past and people that DM me, they have existing tech stack, and it's really important to them to make sure that nothing gets disrupted, because I'm not saying there's duct tape going on. There's a little bit of duct tape on some businesses, but I want to know how, if someone says, yeah, I want to give Prescient a good go here, what's the process and expectations, next steps with getting connected to the platform?
Yeah, I would recommend checking out the first Good American case study that we did.
Okay.
It was a great story. Shout out to Ryan Sliper, their former CRO over there. He was like, dude, there's no way you're going to get me on this platform in under 20 minutes, and the models will be trained in 2 days. And so they timed it. The 6 they onboarded. So we have pre-built APIs across 95% of their ad platforms, where they just go in. There's no installing pixels or changing UTMs or anything. You're just authenticating your us to grab all of your historical data.
Yeah.
And it's 16 minutes. And then our models were trained, back tested, and live in their platform. So they're like, hey, we onboarded on 16 minutes on Monday. We were in the platform on Wednesday. We ran our first optimization scenario, meaning selected a bunch of campaigns, pressed a button, and told them where we should spend and predict what will happen. They implemented it on Thursday and just saw your increase in revenue, increase in website traffic over the next week. And so time to value is really important for us. And we get questions a lot. It was like, well, hey, I've talked to people in AI and they say, how can you guys train a model that fast?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sacrificing the accuracy or the reliability of it? And it all came from the music industry, right? We're firm believers. There's a lot of research papers about how MMM should be built that are leveraged, that take longer to train, right? We've created all of ours from scratch. We actually have 4 different AI models that all talk together, that break up data. Every single campaign gets its own MMM model that breaks it up into millions and millions of different models. And so when we're back testing against all that historical data, instead of just running through one model, right, it's running through multiple models that gets broken into millions of models that all talk to each other using, state-of-the-art math. And that's why we can back test and get people on the platform so quickly. We're actually getting this down to just a couple hours, and we think we can even get it down to even lower as well.
You say this back testing. So are you implying that when someone connects to the platform and you authenticate these ad platforms, and then you run your own tests, and hypothetically, if you were to spend the money instead of kind of what they're doing, you actually run your own kind of internal test against the same ad platform and kind of hypothesize what you believe the results would have been? Is that kind of like that? Because I guess what I'm trying to think about here is I've heard of some models and some people solving similar problems where they're like, hey, you got to give us a couple weeks, no cost to you. We're going to run this solution and you continue running yours, but we're going to run ours too. And if we were to spend your money hypothetically, here's where we believe we would have been. And this way we're training our model with like live data and live conversions. And then we're able to say, okay, well, you're over here doing your thing, PMax, or your own kind of math, your own thing, but running our platform equals these sort of hypothetical results. Or sometimes they do round robin testing where they just. So I just want to hear your feedback about the onboarding process, and then how you feel so confident between what they were currently doing and what you know you're going to do when yours fully runs the campaigns.
So we really want to, before going into like what is the incremental difference if we had run the math, which we kind of did for Cardi, but remember the first thing we did for Warner and the group over there was get them really confident in our measurement. And so when we talk about back testing, every brand is different, right? Even if you have a brand that it's the same product, right? You're going to have different seasonalities. You're going to have essentially different buying cycles, right? There's just a difference in the data structure the same way, but each businesses perform a little bit differently. And so we aggressively go seek out, well, what is the seasonality of the business? What is the buying cycle of the product, right? If you're selling a Peloton for thousands of dollars versus an item in the CPG space that's $40, right? The consideration cycle is much different, which is going to impact attribution windows, right? Which is going to impact halo effects, word of mouth of brands. So we do that. So essentially we're saying, hey, we got data back to 2017 or even 2020, and we're going to train our models and we're going to see if we can predict Q1 of 2021 completely blind, knowing what their spend is based off of the spend and seasonality and buying cycles and all the organic. Can we predict their sales, right? And their ROAS and everything that's coming through? How accurately can we predict that? And doing this millions and millions and millions of time over simulation until we feel really confident about that ecosystem of what drives revenue. But also while we're doing that is, of course, we're picking up on saturation as well, right? And we don't use any linear regressions. It's our biggest selling point when you think about a saturation plot, right? What I mean by that is, instead of just trying to draw a linear line in between your historical data and tell you like where does your spend saturate, we use nonlinear regression models, right? It took years to figure this out. And our saturation plots will look like a camel's back sometimes, right? But what that allows us to do, it allows you to identify that exact point of saturation, telling them, well, hey, here's what you're currently spending based off of the saturation plots across all of your campaigns. And we do this at the individual campaign level, which is unique to us. Here's how you should go spend compared to the performance of how you're currently spending today. And so I know there's a long-winded answer, but the most important part of this whole thing is like the only thing that matters in an MMM is the math. It doesn't matter. Obviously, you want a consumable dashboard, but it's probabilistic. It's not deterministic like an MTA where it's saying, hey, we want to have the best dashboard that can slice and dice, right? Based off of different view through windows and so on, attribution windows and clicks. And this is where we really shine. We have a very reliable model where if you have somebody that does a big drop for you or some anomalous event happens, right, we're going to do a really good job of not attributing that to your revenue.
I see. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. Just wanted to get some clarity on how it works, and I think it's kind of an important differentiator that you folks have. I think that's kind of unique, and math is important at the end of the day, and I appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about just because of the advancement of AI right now. I mean, it's hot on everybody's mind, from like content production, and just seems like it's customer service. There's so many things where AI is actually helping a brand, but also I believe that there is potentially some concern in the marketing space about, I'm going to call it job displacement, but I'm not sure if that's the greatest word or not. But I'd like to hear from your position, like, what do you see the role being the human marketer kind of almost evolving alongside with AI tools? I just want to hear your feedback and where you believe the current and the future is.
I am such a firm believer in, listen, everybody can have different opinions out here, but to the folks in the audience, like, there's so much hype around AI and I'm not shooting myself in the foot by saying this because, we have an AI and machine learning company. It's like, there's an art and a science. The art drastically outweighs the science, right? We have brands to go run optimizations and they're like, no, we want to adjust this, simulation or whatever. Nobody knows the gut and feel of the intuition of the brand. They know the creatives, they know that gut feel, they know their clients, they know the audiences, they know their products better than anything. It's like, Like you can have Moneyball's a great example. Yeah, the Oakland A's did a great job when they applied some math to that, but there's still that gut intuition of which players to put on the field, when to play them. Is it a righty pitcher versus a lefty, hitter?
Mhm.
Is it the exact opposite? Where I do think there could be some concerns in the future is related to automation. I think marketers will lean more towards the art, the creative side. But I intuitively feel that gut instincts and human intuition is always going to be a necessary factor to grow a brand.
Absolutely. So we are kind of nearing the end of the show for today, but I've got a couple of pages of notes here. I always joke on this episode or in my podcast that if I have lots of notes, it means it's actually a good show.
I've been blabbering a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like I have this life of learning mantra, and I just feel so blessed that I have the opportunity to learn from others and the problems they're solving and what people are building. I just feel it's exciting that I get to, kind of pay that forward to those that are listening to this episode. So thanks for that. What sort of like takeaways from today's episode that do you want to share? I just want to make sure that we have kind of, and then maybe like a call to action, like what next steps. So some takeaways and some next steps would be like awesome.
Yeah, I think when it comes, my expertise is MMM, so I'll stay in my lane here. That's all we do. There's a lot of buzz around this right now. Like, don't go rush into doing one because it's a hot topic, right?
Right.
Be very thoughtful about your measurement stack of when you start. When is the right time to factor an MMM in? And it really comes down to, hey, we've really found product market fit. We're dialed in on Meta and Google, and it's time to start scaling into different channels, right? And that could mean sales channels, Amazon or marketplaces or retail.
Yep.
And then take your time when you're evaluating them. Ask questions around like, well, can you show me some of your back testing? Can you decompose my revenue? Meaning, well, what is holidays versus, word of mouth versus my spend? Be very thoughtful about the evaluation and adopt slow, right? Like, don't just start going crazy and just saying, hey, the model told me this. Like, always use your intuition. And if anybody ever just wants to, I love talking about this stuff, business or not. So if anybody ever wants to just get advice on approaching them, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm new to this D2C space, and everybody's at the conference circuits and such, and our clients have been incredibly welcoming to myself and all of my amazing colleagues. And so if we ever can repay the favor by educating on how to use AI, how to think about AI, that's all I've been really doing since 2014. So happy to help.
Absolutely. So I'll update the show notes. I'll put the website in there, prescient-ai.io. We'll have that in there. Links to the resources and your case studies. And I think we even have a custom landing page that's been created. Also, ecommercefastlane.com/prescient. And that's going to redirect you to your offer. And I think it's a great little offer, because I think the deal here is that it's going to get a demo. We're going to understand your business. So can you share just some of the details of kind of what would happen when someone chooses to get a demo, and kind of who's in the sweet spot for the type of customer that could use the value of what Prescient offers?
Yeah, of course. One thing is our URL is awful, so confusing. For now, I think we actually just bought a new URL, so I might update that as well. But folks can just hit me up on LinkedIn as well. My name is Michael True, TRUE, like the opposite of false. And hey, listen, if you're a brand, typically what we see, if the brand is above, you could have a brand that's 20 million and just on Meta and Google. It probably is not a good fit for us. But we're starting to see brands that are above that 10 million threshold that are starting to scale outside of. If you're going to Amazon and you're spending outside of Meta and Google, give us a shout.
Perfect. I'll have everything in the show notes. This has been awesome. I've learned a ton. I think there's just a lot of wasteful spending going on. And I think that's the whole, the crux that I'm getting out of this, is that I think there's ways of using technology to fine tune and understand the customer journey, in your case, top of funnel, and making the best educated mathematical decision about what to do next and how to spend in what campaigns and why, and then being able to prove it. And so I think that's amazing. So just once again, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate having me, and thanks to all the awesome listeners building great brands out there for listening as well. And yeah, give me a shout if you guys would like to chat.
All right, sounds good. Have a great afternoon. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.